Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. The selection and analysis of a data is one of the most important topics in research, and especially in the empirical research. And in this lecture, I have divided this lecture into four main points: kinds of data in translation study that we need to understand, what the different kinds of data that are available for the researcher in the area of translation studies, and then representativeness of the data should be representative according to your topic and according to your hypothesis, and so on and so forth. Categorization of the data, and then the essential part of the statistics, a kind of introduction of statistics and its importance in the area of empirical translation research. Point number one, kind of data. I would like to request you to recall what you have studied in the topic, in the theme, where when we discussed the 12 major areas of translation studies research, because that will also help us in understanding the kinds of data in translation studies. So I think this image can also give some good understanding. In the middle you see the text. So primarily the text is the main data in translation studies. So text, whether it is translated, whether it is source text as compared to the translated text, or other kinds of the text that we'll discuss quickly after some time, or the translator also. Of course, whatever we read, whatever we gather from different sources from about the translator is also a text. Other stakeholders also a text. Technology is also a text, or meta-analysis, that is literature review is part of meta-analysis, and ideology, etc. I think let's explain all these aspects of kinds of data in translation studies. So texts of various kinds, we have translations and original texts. We have also comparable non-translated texts in target language, and I think in the previous talks and lectures we have introduced the comparable non-translated text. Sets of text to be studied might be classified by the translators. What are the texts that are translated by a particular translator, or it can also be classified according to the genre, different genre or text type, that are the literary text, religious texts, and so on and so forth, and language pairs, different language pairs, or single source text and target text, or single source text and two or three target texts, and so on and so forth. So what we need to understand that from this the text of various kinds can also be classified according to different dimensions. Research methods involved are the text analysis and contrastive analysis of the lexical item. So text analysis, techniques of text analysis and contrastive analysis can be used. As for this category is concerned, a researcher can choose lexical items for his or her analysis, grammatical structure, phrases, or equivalent rule, or terminology equivalence, and many other aspects. Translation problems and translation strategies, another aspect of the data in translation studies. So occurrences of partial problems in source text and proposed solution in the target text. Ideology and power relations is another aspect of, again, is related to the translation problem or strategies. And there are textual indicators that indicate towards the influence of ideology and culture in general in the translated text. The question of readability, complexity, and errors, again, we have textual indicators for that. So in one way or the other, we are referring back to the text when we are talking about the data in translation studies. It is also supplemented with evidences from reader reactions. Reader reactions can also be obtained through evidence of reading speed or evidence of text comprehension. These are just examples. Assessment of translation quality is also via questionnaires. So researcher has to develop the questionnaires for the assessment of translation quality, or tests that should be well constructed text. And the translators, so when we are talking about the translators, recorded and transcribed interviews of the translators, and think aloud protocols that are used to get the data for translation, for the translation project or research project, retrospective interviews or computer records of keystroke usage by the translator. So all these aspects revolve around the translator: recorded and transcribed interviews, think aloud protocols, and retrospective interviews and computer records of keystroke usage. Okay, now the best practices in translation studies, also this is related to the process in general, but we are talking about the best practices in translation studies is other in translation. The basic idea originated in business studies, that is the benchmarks, what are the best ways to do the business. So comparison of different ways in companies, in environments, in work environments and workplace situations. Analysis of successful and less successful examples for the best practices and so on. If we take the historical research, we have the documentary material concerning translations and translators, data again in the shape of all these things, translation reviews that are written around a certain translation, translator correspondence, and paratext. And when we say paratext, we are talking about the introductions, prefaces, after word writing in the end, and even epilogues and the like. Bibliographies of translated works also is data for historical research in translation studies, and bibliographies of translators. Meta-analysis study is another kind of data in translation studies, and systematic survey of a particular restricted topic, how the topic initiated or started in the field, and how it was developed, what are the methods that were used for the development during the developmental stages of this topic. Survey of all published and unpublished work about a topic or field, etc. Reinterpretation or evaluation of that data. And literature review is a kind of meta-analysis. Although literature review, of course, is a kind of meta analysis, but it depends upon the magnitude of the project. The bigger the project, and the bigger the analysis. Now we need to take some cautions about the collection of data, because this is very important. In the previous slides, we have very quickly scanned the kinds of data in translation studies. And here we need to, as a researcher, understand and realize the practical things related to the data. So data available, as a researcher, if you have selected a topic or you're thinking about a topic, but you have to take care of all these things. Data available, but finding or getting or eliciting material or data takes time, so more than expected. That aspect should be worked out before embarking on a topic. Translation available but source text is not available, or source text available but translations are to be found. The basic core thing associated with these cautions is the time that is needed by the researchers. Comparable or non-translated text, you have to ensure that the texts are indeed comparable with the translation, and with keeping in view the more detailed aspects like subject matter. Is it really comparable text, or purpose for producing that comparable text is also, in alignment of the requirement of a comparable non-translated text, and the style. Okay, finding text about translation and translators in newspaper, reviews, literary magazines, bibliographies, diaries, and historical works. Facts about translators, where to look, whom to interview, interviews to be made, recorded, and transcribed. These are practical aspects that ask for the pre-planning, or the pre-understanding of on the part of the researcher before practically starting the research project. Okay, procedures of workplace, the finding translators who agree to be observed. This is very much related to the individual freedom of the people, and we are talking about here the translators. So some of the people, they would not agree that they should be observed when it is needed, and also questionnaire to be planned, drawn up, pilot tested. These are nitty-gritties of the questionnaires actually are prepared. Should be questionnaires are to be prepared first, and then planned first, and then prepared, and then drawn up, and then pilot tested. Think about protocols need to be set up, and find your subjects. The subject should also be briefed about the think aloud, or think aloud protocols. And because if these protocols are not explained clearly to the subjects, it may create hurdles, and ultimately may lead towards the wastage of time. We can now talk about the representativeness of the data in a particular research project. So data should be representative of the hypothesis or the topic. So here, two things should be kept in mind: that the data should be representative in more detailed way we can say of the hypothesis, but in nutshell way we can say about the topic. So we have two types of data. That's the question of relevance is also here. The typical data is representative of wider population and of all other instances of given kind. That is typical data. But special data is representative of a special case. And random selection of data of hypothesis, also a requirement. We'll talk about random after some time, random selection or random sampling after some time. Number 3 is the categorization. Categorization is a central element in analysis, both in analysis and synthesis. So variation, if the researcher is looking for the references, and the process, it is actually the process of analysis. But if the research is looking for the pattern and the similarities of the studied topic or studied phenomenon, it is called process of synthesis and generalization. Categorization is a form of interpretive hypothesis. Again, it depends upon the type of hypothesis, or the phrase used for in the hypothesis, and the how the topic has been phrased. So the categorization is also categorization reflects both the things here. You propose a category if it is useful, of course. If it allows you to say something interesting, to make a valid generalization, which is very important, to formulate a precise hypothesis about some part of the data, that is the further fruit of your study. Formulate a precise hypothesis about some part of the data. Two types of categorizations are available. One is classical categorization, where the There are distinct line between left and right, or A and B, the black and white. And this classification, this categorization is mutually exclusive. They don't have any gray areas, not overlapping. But on the other hand, the natural or the fuzzy categorization, the black, white, and then gray areas. There are always gray areas, have common areas as well. They are overlapping. These categories are overlapping. We have example as young, old, dead and alive, brain dead and artificially alive. The how these categories are determined and made is actually, these are determined by nature of the topic. This is the first step. And nature of the material being studied, second step. And the model that is used for the study and research, and hypothesis. These are four basic elements that guide the better classification or categorization here. The last point is using statistics. So statistics is necessary for empirical study, of course. Whether this is a full empirical study or it's a partial, empirical, it's part of the empirical study. It's a part of the other qualitative study where the numbers are very important. So statistics in brief is collection, processing, and interpreting the collected and categorized data. Basic understanding of these statistics is necessary for translation studies research in empirical dimension. Nowadays, of course, the human being, they don't need to calculate all these. There are software like SPSS, and that is statistical package for social sciences, and many other software are available for these calculations. Random sampling. So the word random literally, means is haphazard sampling, but in the statistics sense, the random means that it is done through well-defined procedure. It is not, done blindly, or as I said, haphazard way. It contains all sample of the data, and we can take quick example here. If a research is let's say studying 24 novels of a translator, 24, so it is impossible to study the whole data or the text that is available in the 24 25 novels of a single translator. So 5 novels can be selected, and then table of random numbers can also be used for this purposes. The on in shape of paper or now electronically. There are easy ways to do the sampling, and as I mentioned in the previous slide here, SPSS also provide this facility of this table of random numbers. Okay, processing the data, we have three major ways. Basic concepts of mean and average. Mean or average is it is let's take the example. If there are 10 students in a group, and they got total 560 marks, the average marks or the mean of the group would be 56 marks. Median is actually it is arranging numbers in order of size from the lowest to the highest, and choosing the middle number. Here, for example, you can see 12, 40, 40, 42, 48, 60, and 75, and the middle number is of course 42, and this is the median. But in case of two middle numbers, let's say there are 10 values, average of the two middle numbers. Of course, here are 10 values: 12, 40, 40, 42, 48, and 60, 75, 78, 80, 85. So the middle two numbers are of course combined and divided over 2, and then we have this 54. Median gives typical value because it is not affected by extreme values. The third is mode, and third set of number that occurs most in a set, of course. That here in this example 38, 40, 41, 42, 43, and again 43, 85, 90, and 95. So the mode of this set is 43 because 43 is occurring twice as compared to other values. Useful mode is very useful where mean or median give a misleading picture of data. I did not touch the most technical aspects of the statistics here for certain reasons. But the statistics, some do's and don'ts are very important. The researcher should have a clear understanding of the data that is being measured through these statistical tools. Also, the researcher should select the most appropriate means to measure this data. Taking a course in statistics is a good step for if a researchers is embarking on a topic which is related to empirical research. I think this number 3 is very good one. The researcher should present the finding in a most appropriate format and using table, bar, chart, histogram, frequency curve, graph. I mean, this all these or some other techniques should be used to improve the presentation of the research results. And last but not least, the researcher should give a proper interpretation of the results and using all the relevant statistical tools and techniques that are, as I said earlier and I repeat, that are nowadays available, has become very easy and available in the software form and apps. Many apps are also available. With this lecture ends. Take very good care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum.